what I wanted to do today is just talk a little bit about what we do as surgeons. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a history on me, I'm actually originally from Sri Lanka, grew up in Africa, went to school in England, came to America to the East Coast, and then did my training in Chicago. I actually did a liver transplant fellowship at Baylor in Dallas. I married a woman who grew up in Texas, and so one thing about Texans is all Texan women come home. And so here I am back in Texas. I think the whole point of that is to say, I'm just a country doctor. The question is, what country, right? Because I don't know what this accent is. So the great thing is when I go in to see a patient, I'll try to talk to you a little bit about, what it's like from the doctor's side. But when I go in to see a patient, one of the things I can always do is, if the patient's from England, I can go, hello, how are you? It's lovely to meet you. Then I walk in the next room and they're from, India, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with your tumor, man, And then I can go into the next room, and they're from Africa, and I said, "This is really bad. You've got a tumor in your, in your liver." And then I can go into the next room, and I got my good East Texas folks, and I go, "We got to cut that thing right out." So that's sort of how I sort of approach things, and so I'm located in Dallas at Methodist Hospital. I approach what I do as ministry more than work. I mean, that's really what it's all about, and I just love what I do, and I just thank God every day for allowing me to do what I do. So what I thought I'd do today is briefly, I don't have a lot of time, but to provide a perspective of what your surgeon is thinking when you're walking in the room, outline what's new, and then understand what can be done with surgery. So let me just go through sort of a very routine kind of what may be your life story, which is, you screening colonoscopy, a mass is found, and the patient is sent to see one of us to take this out. We would normally see how far things have spread. So has the tumor spread from the colon to somewhere else? And today, just for the purpose of this, I'm just going to use colon cancer as a jumping off point, colon cancer that spread to the liver. And so this is really the issue. Often, so many patients come to see me and they've not had a plan that's been put in place, or they've not been told, and it's terrible. So I really feel like one of my greatest jobs is to explain things and come up with a plan. Sometimes it's not the plan we want, but it still needs to be a plan. The other thing I emphasize to my office, and again, many of you caregivers will know this, is whatever happens with the story, that first person on the phone, you'll remember their voice for the rest of your lives. And so if we can't provide at least responsiveness. It's like you heard, nobody returned their calls, right, for transplant. At least, I don't know what we have available, but I know a place that may be able to help. At least we should do that. And so my job and my passion is to have a plan and be your quarterback, like I'm going to be that person that's going to find you what the clinical trial is available, or, if I can't do something, maybe somebody at Memorial in New York can, I mean, it's not just because I can't do it, I can't close my eyes to what's available out there. And so just to kind of give you an example of what a scan would look like, I'm a big fan of MRI. And here you see normal liver in the white, and you see this big tumor in the middle. Now, this patient actually was thought to have another sort of amazing fact about medicine. We think it's just science, right? It's so black and white, it's got to be correct. When we biopsied this gentleman's liver, we weren't sure if this was metastatic colon cancer because he did have a remote history of a colon cancer, or if this was a cholangiocarcinoma, which is a bile duct tumor. Some of you may have that tumor. It's a very unusual tumor, but under the microscope, they look very similar. So we had to spend quite a bit of time trying to figure this out. So again, a 13-centimeter tumor, which is, a size of a cantaloupe, pretty much. And just to show you, these are some of the major blood vessels that are entering the liver. And what I have to do is to try to get this out while preserving at least blood supply to one part of the liver that I can leave behind. And you can see this vessel. and I have to preserve this vessel. So we're kind of slicing down like we're going towards the feet, okay? Okay, so with that specific case, what we were able to do was to use liver-directed therapy, what you're going to hear today, to try and shrink that a little bit. And then we were able to take it out. We're still dealing with issues because the patient has a new lesion that we're dealing with right now. But I just want to say, that's the kind of thing that we're dealing with. So I want you to remember a few things. I always try to remember something that defines my patient, not their tumor. So I deal with pancreatic cancer, and I remember I did this huge operation for pancreatic cancer called the Whipple procedure, which is huge. And I always think about, okay, so my 84-year-old lady that I saw who had a pancreatic cancer, she loved to line dance. Okay, so that was my thing. It's not just getting through this operation. That's not a sign of success. It was getting her back to line dancing. So everyone has that one thing that I have in my mind as a goal. That is what we're going to deal with as a sign of success. And I also keep in my mind when we get to a point, and sometimes this occurs, unfortunately, where that's not possible, we do need to have the discussion about what do we want to achieve? Because is life worth it without this goal? And so I'm very open to that with my patients because I think it's important, and most of my patients want to talk about that. They want to talk about quality, not just quantity of life. And so we always want to talk about that. I look for any opening for a spiritual bond. And again, I always tell my patients, whomever you believe in, him or her, let's talk about it, because as many of you know, the moment that you're told you've got cancer, I don't care if you don't believe in anything, you believe in something at that moment. Yeah. And so it may be the tree outside, I don't care what you call it, that is important. And so to me, I believe that as physicians, we should be able to at least help with that energy. Last of all, I really like to be aggressive when appropriately so, as long as my patient is on board with that and we have a chance. So I also want to say this, right? For metastatic colon cancer, we can't cure you with any one of these things. And Y90s, radiation beads, we need all of these modalities to help you. And so I'm part of a bigger team, and we have this whole team of people. So one of my greatest prides is getting all of these people in a room with you at the center, right? And I know it doesn't always feel that way, because sometimes people feel like they're talking over you, or they talk like, in another language, right? I mean, it's like, gosh, we've got an adenocarcinoma that is KRAS mutated, please break this down for me. But please understand that for most of us, and I really believe this, you are at the center of this. I'm really excited about some things that we're doing actually at our hospital, even things like centering nursing care around you, so that when you're in a hospital, you could have the same group of nurses taking care of you, whatever level of care you're. We're actually trialing some of these things. So, you are the important person. I actually, when I'm talking to some of my trainees, I actually have a slide with the Wizard of Oz, the Land of Oz, and you are Oz, and we need to speak gastro-speak and onco-speak and all of these other languages that relate to what is going on with you. So my next aim when I see somebody is really surgery is our best way to provide a cure, if we can achieve that. And so how can I get this out? And I just wanted to talk to you about, for example, sometimes we're dealing with lesions, 2 on this side, 3 on that side, and just to kind of talk a little bit through some things that we would have never considered these resectable, but now what we can do is we can ablate or cut out those things. We can block the vein to this side, and then this will grow, and then we can come back and do an even bigger liver resection. So again, it's not a lot of patients that have this potential, but we do have some possibilities available for us. And this is just a slide of my friendly interventional radiologist. They're actually sticking a needle right into the liver, into one of the big veins. Scared the living daylights out of me when they did this, because this is kind of the kind of thing, even in the operating room, I'm trying to avoid doing, and they are specifically doing this. And what they've done over here is they're showing us the veins going into the liver. Remember on that first slide, I was saying I needed to preserve some of that. And then what they're doing over here is they're blocking off with coils, okay? So what they've done is they blocked off the blood supply to the right side, or part of the blood supply. We're then going to get that other side to grow, because it's not enough to just leave that little piece of liver, and then I can come in and take out a ton of liver, okay? Not available for a lot of people. I just want to, I don't want to give anyone false hope over here, but it is something that we're looking at all of these different things that we can do. So we can also use Y90. What we now do with radiation beads is that we can cut out these things, and then we treat through the artery, not the vein, because there's two blood supplies, and we can kind of use radiation to cause the same effect. And then we come in and take out this big piece, okay? So big slide, but with metastatic colon cancer, in my mind, what I'm thinking is, can I take it out? If I can, I'm going to give chemo first, and then I'm going to try and step off over here, resect, plus minus, I'll try and do the matrix over here, plus minus the primary tumor. Whereas if it's not resectable, we'll start with chemo, and I'm very excited about what we're seeing with Y90, because I used to think if there are lots of little small lesions in the liver, we would never get to a point where we would do anything with that. We would, because we couldn't resect them. But what we're finding is that the smaller tumors are actually going away with a combination of Y90 and chemotherapy, and then we can do some more aggressive things. So that's kind of crazy and very new, and probably not ready for complete prime time, but it is certainly an observation that we've had. So I'm getting more aggressive, and I just want to show you an sort of an inspirational story of somebody that I don't think would be alive today without some of the treatment algorithms that we have. So 66-year-old male presented with colon cancer in 2012. He had a sigmoid lesion, which is on the left side, and had lots of tumors. You see the arrows. Tumor here, tumor there, tumor here, tumor there, tumor there, tumor here, tumor here, tumor here, tumor here, tumor here, tumor here. It looks like a shotgun, right? Unfortunately. And you can see all of these little black dots are tumor. Tumor. Yes, tumor. So this was where I said patient is unresectable, because I can't take out all of those things and leave enough liver. So we treated him with FOLFOX, which is a chemotherapy, for 12 cycles, which is quite a lot, actually. His blood tests got normal, and in September of 2013, amazing, right? It looks so different. Okay, so this was chemotherapy doing this, okay? But we do know that just because they disappear doesn't mean that they're gone. They're going to come back if we don't do something else. So we took out the tumor in his colon because he was doing so well, and then we treated the liver with Y90, because again, I wanted to emphasize to you, just chemo alone isn't going to cure this. Now we come up to, he's treated with maintenance chemotherapy. I think about chemo like antibiotics. Sometimes, when you've got chronic urinary tract infections, you just need to stay on antibiotics, unfortunately. Same deal with chemo. So we use kind of non-toxic chemo. This is an oral medicine. And then look at the scans until July of 2015. Remember, the story started in 2012. This is not expected. So now we have one thing here and one thing here. So guess what? I took him to the operating room and I cut out those lesions and ablated them. And this is his most recent scan as of end of 2015. This is where we cut out stuff. And this is where I ablated something. Not to say that this is everyone's life story. He had a Goodrus tumor. It was behaving itself. But I wanted to let you know there are ways to think outside the box. And so look for that, please. And again, just to bring you up to speed, things are looking really well for this gentleman right now, okay? Okay, so he just has the 2 areas that we treated. This is an example where we use radiation beads as what I call definitive therapy, because it actually treated the small lesions that I wouldn't have normally thought would have been going away, and then we resected or ablated the other lesions. And so, I didn't talk about these other tumors, because there may be people in the audience that have these things, cholangiocarcinoma, bile duct tumor, metastatic breast, metastatic renal cancer, melanoma, and hepatocellular carcinoma, which you heard about today. But we have to be aggressive, but it's got to make sense. So it's got to be sure that the life story of this tumor is behaving itself and is allowing us to do these things. And so I just want to thank you for having me, and hopefully I gave you just a little insight into what we're thinking and what we're doing as surgeons. It's just such an honor to be able to do what I do. I always tell my wife it's like going to church every day. If you just look for the opportunities, and they're not always good testimonies, but they're always testimonies. We just have to look for them. And so, the 37-year-old that I laparoscoped yesterday, I put a telescope into her belly with a 4-year-old there, and a husband who has peritoneal disease from a stomach cancer, meaning it's on the lining of her abdomen and I can't take that out. How do I do that? How can I go home and hug my kids last night? We had to go to a wedding last night, and it was, I have to be able to move on. I have to, because I'm not helping you as a patient if I can't move on. You don't need me in the operating room to be crying. You need me to be cutting this tumor out. But should that mean that I lose my humanity? No. I don't ever want to get used to it. I don't ever want to get used to it. I cried with a husband yesterday because I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen here. But I will have a plan for them. I will. And we have a plan for chemotherapy. I will be honest with my patients. I was very honest. I don't believe this is curable. But I promise you that if there's anyone in this country or in the world that can help you, I at least will try to get you to them. Because I don't think I have anything else, but maybe somebody else does. Okay? And so we cannot be proud as physicians, and that's the other part, is sometimes if your doctor says they don't want you to have a second opinion, find a new doctor. Because we should all be comfortable enough. I encourage my patients to have a second opinion, especially when I'm taking on like that kind of liver tumor where the patient could die on the table. I never want that family to say, what if we had done something different, right? I couldn't sleep. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror at night if I ever thought that thought would ever cross their mind. I need to be sure that we're bonded on every level, hopefully physically, spiritually, and mentally. Thank you so much. I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
Doctor, I really do appreciate your insights, especially the surgery, because my better half just went through a 10-hour surgery about 6 weeks ago. Fortunately, no tumors benign. So we're real happy about that. But what I am curious to know about is, especially from your perspective as a clinician, but even more importantly as the team of physicians that come together, is that especially in her case, we were amazed at the brain power and the skill level that was coming to her case. She had everybody completely baffled, but what I think a lot of us also experience is that as much as we're a part of the conversation and we're in the room, we're also not a part of the conversation, but we're still in the room. And the reason being is because it seems like we're being talked more about as a case as opposed to a person who gets overlooked. So all of a sudden we become that file.
Yes.
And so listening to the chatter back and forth between everybody trying to get on the same page and figure out the plan of attack, it's almost like, okay, not only can we dumb this down a little bit, but more importantly, can we get some give and take here in terms of how do I feel about this? What do I think? Does my opinion matter in all this?
Absolutely. No, and I think that that's excellent. So one of the things I do a lot of teaching, we have medical students, residents, and fellows. One of the big things I do is I don't take a computer into the room. Okay, number one, because I need to be looking at you eye level. Number two, I never stand up if my patient is sitting down. So I always sit on a stool so that we're eye level, because it's true. Who am I to be looking down on my patient? What does physical presence, that is, that's crazy. Third of all, I believe in contact a lot. I'm a big hugger, sometimes I hope it's not, people don't think it's like, because, sometimes you want your doctor to be very, very, very professional, but I'm like, at the end of my interaction with the patient, I'm usually like, let's just, let's have a hug. And, I usually hold my patient's hand if I'm breaking bad news, even if it's, in the hospital, I'll usually sit on the bed, etc. So the discussion is always, to me, with that patient. The way I try to engage the whole family is usually I will try to meet everyone's eye, because I need to feel in my heart that we are engaged and we're all in this together. If I notice that a family member is not meeting my eye, or is looking away, or I know that there's some discomfort there. So I usually, at the end of, usually my first encounter with a patient is about an hour-long discussion. I usually stop and say, do you have any questions? Do you have any concerns? And I'm very honest. I'm like, listen, I'm a little guy. I'm not a big name. I'm just a little guy in Dallas. I am not, I'm at Methodist Hospital. I think one thing that's really lucky for me is, I'm an immigrant to this country. I just feel so fortunate to have the opportunities that I've been afforded. I don't feel any right to anything that's been given to me, and that's a great way to approach things. I don't know that my kids feel the same way, which is a shame, because I really think, and many of us know that, right? Because I think our kids often are doing better than what we were brought up with, whatever that may be. And we want that for them, but at the same time, we lose the fact that, if they don't have the iPhone 6, it's not, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm like the worst kid at school, And so I try to do those things. I try to always, it's just, I think it's EQ and not IQ. And unfortunately, especially surgeons, I always say are socialized at a high school level, because they usually know that they want to do this and they stop maturing at that level. So, you're dealing with, most of the time, fairly immature folks, even though they're brilliant. As my sister always says, all brains but no common sense. So I don't want to take up too much time, but I am happy. Yes, ma'am.
If someone has large tumors in their liver, are they still qualified for the Y90?
They are. And so typically what I find is that the Y90 will actually treat the smaller tumors better than the large tumors. We can't expect that large tumors are going to go away with Y90, but we may have other options after that. There are a couple of other kind of cool things on the horizon too, including proton therapy, which is an external beam radiation, or stereotactic radiosurgery, which is radiation therapy to certain areas of the liver. We're a little cautious when we do both Y90 and that, but yes, there are options. Yeah. And again, it's a multidisciplinary approach. This is not a decision that just the radiologist makes or just the medical oncologist makes. These are decisions that we all have to make together. Now, I don't want to give anyone false hope, please, okay? Because I want to be realistic about this. Some of these ways that we can do things are fairly avant-garde and are only available for a minority of patients. But, my passion is to see that patient that may not know that they have options. And so please, I want to rely on you guys to spread the word, because when we look at, say, pancreatic cancer, stage 1 pancreatic cancer, which is resectable pancreatic cancer in Texas, only 20% of those patients see a surgeon. So if I can, in Dallas, there's a lot of money in Dallas. People can go anywhere they want to. There's a lot. For me, my passion, grandma in, Paris, Texas, who may not have known that she has the option. That's what I want. So get the word out, please, to at least seek an opinion. May not change things, but at least make sure you've looked under every rock. Okay, thank you.